Middlesbrough need another win at home at the Riverside Stadium if we're to stand any chance of getting into the top two this season. Now, of course, Middlesbrough's hopes are really hanging by a thread after a really disappointing few weeks in which we slipped up a number of times on home soil, really saw our form hit the buffers. But we have got back to decent form over the last week or so, recording a 2-2 draw against Ipswich Town at Portman Road, a match which we probably should have won if it wasn't for that contentious penalty decision. And then, of course, we did secure a 1-0 victory over Sheffield Wednesday on Wednesday night. It was a big 3 points, a really valuable 3 points to end a lengthy winless run. It wasn't a spectacular game by any means. In truth, it was absolutely shocking. A really poor performance, a really poor game of football. But ultimately, all that mattered from that game was getting the 3 points that we needed just to keep ourselves in the running for the top two. Now, it does seem really, really unlikely that we're going to get there. We do need a number of favours from teams around us. Millwall playing on Friday night against Leicester City. Leicester City have already been relegated, so we'd be needing a big favour from them. Of course, Ipswich Town are the other side that we're really sort of looking at. They're currently in second spot at the time of recording, but they have a game in hand on Middlesbrough, 3 points ahead of Middlesbrough. And so that means that really Middlesbrough need to get a victory over Watford on Saturday afternoon to stand any chance of getting into the top two. Maybe just in the hope of still being in the mix going into that final weekend of the season when, of course, we travel to take on Wrexham. It's an old cliche, but anything can happen on the final day of the season. So I think for Middlesbrough, all we can sort of hope for really is that we are still in the mix going into that match in Wales. Now, of course, Middlesbrough have all but secured a spot in the playoffs, which is great. There has been a little bit of concern over the last couple of weeks about whether we would actually be able to, whether our form was so bad that we could actually end up slipping right through the playoff places and out of them. But as per the table, it does mean that we are pretty much confirmed for a top six finish, barring a pretty monumental goal swing from the two sides in Wrexham and Hull, who are challenging for those places in sixth place in the table. So Middlesbrough in quite a comfortable position going into this match against Watford. There's very little to lose, I guess, at this point. An awful lot to gain if we can get a victory. But I think the main thing really for Middlesbrough will be about just continuing this positive run of form. Like I said, it wasn't great against Sheffield Wednesday. We were far from our fluent best, but it was great to get a victory to end that winless run. It does mean that hopefully against Watford we can really start putting together a really positive run of form. If we can get a victory against Watford, it would mean that we'd have won back-to-back games for the first time in a little while. It would mean that we'll be 3 games unbeaten. And this is the sort of momentum that Middlesbrough need to start showing if we are going to be getting into the playoffs and standing any sort of chance. Because if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago, I really wouldn't have been that confident of Middlesbrough's hopes of thriving in the playoffs. But if we can just start to put these results together, we can start threading together some decent performances and some decent results, then all of a sudden things start to look a little bit more promising going into the playoffs. And maybe, just maybe, Middlesbrough might be able to do something quite special to finish off the job. A job that we've started so well this season before falling off again, I guess, in the last couple of weeks. Now, Kim Hellberg spoke to the media on Friday afternoon. He was speaking about our hopes of getting into the top two and our hopes of getting into the playoffs. He was quite open about the fact that it seems most likely that we will be playing in the playoffs, but kind of saying that he still believes, he still speaks really, really highly of this Middlesbrough team and the fact that we have now got the most points that we have done in the last 10 seasons since we were last in the Premier League, which is a really impressive stat. And we've still got the best defence in the Championship as well, which is really impressive as well. So Middlesbrough are in good shape, and I think it was just sort of reminding people just what this Middlesbrough team's capable of. It was, as we said against Sheffield Wednesday, it wasn't great, but he did make a real effort at the end of that game. You might have seen the clips on social media of him going over to the South Stand, to the Red faction, speaking through the megaphone to really gee up the supporters and tell them and remind them that we do need them going into this match against Watford and moving forward, because I think getting the fans on board, getting fans really behind the team over these next couple of games will be really, really important for Middlesbrough as we look to hopefully do something special. Now, a couple of headlines coming out from that press conference. He was asked about injuries. Of course, he was. It's all he's ever asked about these days, given the players that are on the sidelines. Of course, we had Morgan Whittaker back in the team, back in the starting lineup against Sheffield Wednesday, and he got the goal, so it was great to see him back. He played 60 minutes of that game, so it'll be interesting to see whether he's deemed fit enough to start against Watford this weekend, or whether his minutes will still be managed, because, of course, if we are looking towards the playoffs, it'll be really important to make sure that our players are as fresh as possible. He was asked about Hayden Hackney as well, and Kim Helberg said that Hackney wouldn't be available for this weekend. He was a little bit coy on Hackney's fitness and when he's likely to be available. He's previously spoken about hopefully trying to get him back in time for that last game of the season against Wrexham. Of course, all eyes likely seem to be on the playoffs and hopefully getting these players back fit for that. Matt Targett suffered an injury against Sheffield Wednesday, but there's no concern there. It seems like he's going to be back in the squad at the very least for the match against Watford on Saturday afternoon. Riley McGree, he's not going to be available to face Watford. Seems like he's just going to need another couple of days to recover. It sounds like he's going to be returning to training with the first team next week. So he should be back into contention, hopefully, for this match against Wrexham. Not a long-term issue, but maybe the weekend's match against Watford coming a little bit too soon. There is a little bit more bad news on the injury front, and that was with regards to Alfie Jones. Kim Helberg was asked by Craig Johns at Teesside Live whether Alfie Jones was likely to return before the end of the season, and the message was that it seemed unlikely. It seemed most likely that his season's finished. Seems probably, unlikely that he's going to be back, in time for Wrexham, but also in time to play any sort of role in the playoffs. Of course, we are now really sort of getting to that back end of the season. It's only a week to go until the end of the regular season. Of course, the playoffs will take place in the other week or so after that. So, of course, you're only talking about a time frame of 2, possibly 3 weeks between now and the end of the season. So, it seems like that's going to come too soon for Alfie Jones, which is a real shame. But hopefully, we can get him back to full fitness and back for next season, because at the start of the season, he was really, really good for us, really impressive in central defence. And I think as we are looking to build for next season, whatever division we're in, the hope will be that Alfie Jones can play a really important role in doing so. So, of course, Hayden Hackney is the main headline news from that, the fact that he won't be available again this weekend against Watford. I don't think that's much of a surprise. I don't think anyone expected him to be available for the match against Watford. But there was also a little bit of room for conversation about Aidan Morris, because Aidan Morris has been absolutely brilliant over the last few weeks. Even when Middlesbrough have been struggling, he's been one of the few players who've come away with some real credit based on his performances. I think he's, in my opinion, he seems to have taken his game to a new level almost since Hayden Hackney's been out injured. Of course, his partnership with Hackney, one of the best in the Championship. We've kind of had the brawn, I guess, of Aidan Morris alongside Hackney. Hackney's then been given the freedom to push forward and play his natural game of bursting between the lines and linking up the midfield and the attack. And Aidan Morris has typically sat a little bit deeper, getting the ball off the defenders and kind of playing as that sort of deep lying playmaker. But what we've seen over the last couple of weeks when Hackney's been injured is Aidan Morris playing much more of a role of a kind of all-round midfielder. He's been much better at getting forward, a real all-round threat. And I think what we've seen as well as that is, yes, it's his quality, it's his passing ability and his drive to get forward, but I think it's his personality as well. He's a real leader in the Middlesbrough dressing room. Someone who, even when you look at it before the game and you're talking about the team talk when they do the huddle on the pitch, and even if Dale Fry's got the armband, it's often Aidan Morris who's leading those team talks. So it really shows just how big a leader he is. He really seems like a proper character, a proper old school central midfielder, a really tenacious winner, someone who just wants to go out there and win every game of football, wants to win every single tackle. And that's exactly what Middlesbrough need. I mean, I've been really impressed with Aidan Morris since he signed for us. To be fair, he's been a really, really good player for us. I think particularly more recently, he's become a really integral player for this club. And I think, from my opinion, he seems like a future Middlesbrough captain. There's been a little bit of talk about whether he could potentially be someone who's of interest to clubs higher up the pecking order. Of course, I think people are quite resigned to the fact that Hayden Hackney will move on this summer. I think that seems inevitable. If we don't go up, it seems definite that I can't see him staying in the Championship for another season. He's only got a year left on his Middlesbrough contract. So if we don't go up, it's almost definite that he'll move on. Some suggestions that even if we did go up, he might still move on, because if he did get the opportunity to move to one of the more top, more elite clubs in the Premier League, or to one of the bigger clubs in one of Europe's big 5 leagues, then that could be something that would be of interest to him. Of course, he has had interest in the past from top clubs in Germany. He had interest from Porto. So there are some clubs who could be playing in European competition next season who might be interested. So even if we did get promoted, it's not to say that he would definitely be be sticking around with us, although I do think that he'd quite like to. I do think there'd be something in him that if we did get promoted to the Premier League, he would love nothing more than to lead his hometown club in Middlesbrough out in the Premier League, because what a story that would be. I mean, to have someone like him in the team leading us out as we hope to try and avoid relegation next season, that would be absolutely massive. But I think with Aidan Hackney's future almost decided, almost feeling like he's definitely going to move on, I think attention has turned to Aidan Morris and whether he could potentially attract interest from elsewhere. I could see it. I could definitely see bigger clubs wanting to come in for him. I'm looking at clubs in the Premier League, and I sort of struggle to think that he would maybe be the profile of what they would be looking for, just in terms of age, in terms of what he offers on the pitch. I think that potentially he could be more suited to a top club in Europe. I could see him moving to Germany or even to Spain, playing for a sort of top half club for one of those clubs in La Liga or the Bundesliga. But I mean, hopefully for Middlesbrough, we can keep hold of him. I think there's certainly more to come from Aidan Morris. I don't think he's the finished article. I think that there is still room for improvement. And like I said, I could really see him being a future captain of Middlesbrough if he was to stick around. So I would love Aidan Morris to stay with Middlesbrough, and hopefully he can play a massive role in the next couple of weeks as we look to either finish in the top two, or if not that, challenge in the playoffs and try and find our way through that two-legged affair before going on to Wembley and inevitably securing promotion. I think we will need our leaders for those kind of games, and I think Aidan Morris would be absolutely massive in doing exactly that. So before we get on to those games, of course, we're going to talk about the match against Watford this weekend, who could potentially start. And I think, to be honest, in terms of options for Kim Hellberg, they're fairly limited in terms of who could come into the team, what changes he could potentially make. We've mentioned about Morgan Whittaker. The question will be whether he's deemed fit to start a second game in just a few days, or whether he drops back to the bench and then maybe comes on as a second half substitute. If that happens, then you might look at someone like Jeremy Sarmiento to come onto the pitch. Matt Targett, we've said he's a bit of a doubt. It's likely that he'll be in the squad, but whether he's deemed fit to start, you'd imagine that will be a toss-up between him and Alex Bangura for playing on that left side of defence. But again, Bangura has been suffering with an injury of late, so it'll be interesting to see whether he's deemed to be fully fit to start that game. Defence, you'd imagine it'll be pretty much the same. Luke Ayling, Dale Fry, Adelson Malander. Interesting to see whether Kim Hellberg sticks with this experiment of Adelson Malander almost drifting into that number 6 role, because he's looked a little bit iffy in that kind of role. I think we've almost, he's a good defender, a really strong, powerful defender who's got a good pass on him. I think maybe we've got a little bit carried away with how good a passer he is. He's good when he's in that back line. He's got space to play forward. But I think when he has been drifting forward, he has been caught out a few times in the last couple of weeks, caught out in possession. His passings maybe left a little bit to be desired. It's kind of allowed clubs to intercept and cause problems themselves. He's also been caught in possession a couple of times and caught out of position and that sort of thing as well. So I think that's something that Kim Hellberg maybe needs to have a little think about. I mean, to be fair, whether that's a long-term solution, maybe that's something that has come as a knock-on effect to Aidan Hackney not playing in the team. He's sort of been seeing Adelson Malander playing that kind of Aidan Morris type of role, and so maybe because Aidan Morris has been having to play slightly more advanced doing the Aidan Hackney role, it's maybe meant that Adelson Malander's had to slot in and sort of fill in that sort of midfield pocket between defence and midfield alongside Alan Brown. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Callum Britton likely to start on the right. He enjoyed a great first half of the season. Since he's come back from injury, he hasn't quite been the same. I think his end product, his final delivery, has been a little bit lacking, in my opinion, but still definitely good enough to start the game. As we mentioned, Aidan Morris, Alan Brown, almost certain to start. You go into the final third, and you're looking at who's gonna slot into the other team there in the final third. And I think once again, you're looking at David Strelach and Tommy Conway playing up front. They were excellent against Ipswich, a little bit more quiet against Sheffield Wednesday. But I was keeping an eye on David Strelach in that game, and he was seeming to stick in more of a traditional number 9 role, which I think I've spoken about before. It's something where I think that'll be really beneficial for him to be in that striking position to get on the end of these chances. I think for Middlesbrough, it would be great as well, because yes, you're going to have to pull him out of Middlesbrough's build-up play, but to have someone who is almost permanently in the box there to finish off the chances when they come to him, that could be really, really beneficial. And I've just got a feeling that David Strelec could be a really, really important player for us between now and the end of the season. If we're to, whether it's going up automatically, whether it's going through the playoffs, I do think that if we can just get the best out of David Strelec and kind of get him into these dangerous positions to put the ball in the back of the net, that could even be the difference between Middlesbrough securing promotion and not. So I'd really like him to play. I'd really like him and Conway to start up front and to maybe get on the back of the find the back of the net again, because if they can do so, I think that'll be another boost to their confidence. And as I said, it's just about building up this momentum at this point. It's just about building up that form, building up that confidence, so that whatever happens at the end of the season, even if it is going into the playoffs, if we can just have a little bank of unbeaten games, that would be absolutely fantastic to go into them. It would just give fans a bit of a lift. It would give the players the knowledge and kind of remind them what it feels like to be a sort of really difficult team to play against, something which we've lost over the last few weeks, but we are slowly building it again. So hopefully if we can get a result against Watford, and that'll be another step in the right direction. But certainly top two is still on as it stands at the moment. I do think we need a couple of favours. It's very, very unlikely that we'll do it, but if we can get a victory against Watford, you sort of think that maybe if we can just take it to that last day of the season, you never know what's going to happen. And even if we can just squeeze in there, that'd be great. Even if not, just pick up a little bit of form going into the playoffs, and I think we'd be in a really good position. So I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think going into the Watford game, of how you think we'll get on. Will we be able to secure another home victory to make it back-to-back home wins at the Riverside? God, imagine that. It's been a long time since that's happened. So drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about Middlesbrough's match against Watford and how you think we'll get on. If you have enjoyed this, please do hit like. Please do hit subscribe as well. If you are listening on the podcast platforms as well, then please do rate and review as well. I will catch up with you after the Watford game. I'll be there with the Red Radio. I'll be doing a live reaction from the Riverside Stadium after that game. And I will catch up with you then after what will hopefully be another home win. Up the Borough.